What will happen to the United States and the world with the upcoming return of President Trump in 2025?
Whatever the United States would do have an enormous impact.
How should Japan position itself in this context?
To place itself to see the perspective from the global south.
The leaders of two prominent think tanks in Japan delve into the global landscape beginning in 2025 and Trump's second presidency.
Hello, I'm your host, Jackie Ensman. My first guest is Ambassador Sasae Kenichiro. Ambassador Sasae, welcome.
Nice to see you. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Our second guest is Dr. Sunami Atsushi. Dr. Sunami, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here.
As Japan's ambassador to the U.S. during Trump's first term, Ambassador Sasae was on the front lines of U.S.-Japan negotiations and played a key role in fostering the friendly relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Abe. He now leads the Japan Institute of International Affairs, a prominent think tank. Dr. Sunami studied political science in New York and specializes in science and technology policy in Japan. He leads one of Japan's largest private think tanks, traveling the world as a key figure in public diplomacy.
The presidential election ended with an overwhelming victory for Donald Trump. How should we interpret these election results? And are you expecting any significant differences between the previous Trump administration and this next administration?
Of course, there is a big difference. I mean, the fundamental philosophy and thinking behind Mr. Trump could be the same, but what could happen could be very different. He has a lot of experience accumulated, and then he has more power to do it. So whatever the United States would do have an enormous impact, not only the United States, but also globally.
Well, I think how he came into the White House is very different from the previous time. And now Europe is in war, of course, and the situation Middle East is very different, complicated. And then the issue of the rise of the global South, the international environment is very different from previous Trump administration. So I think this is a great challenge for him, but he really understands what he needs to do.
Looking at this election, what do you think it implies regarding U.S. society and its current state right now domestically?
I think it became very divisive and more divisive and possibly more uncertain. Is this a long-term, trend or just a short-term trend? Because of frustrations of American people about the economy and illegal immigrants or human rights and women's rights and so forth? Or is this more fundamental shift or trend of American way of doing the things, including the democratic institutions, how the America would play the role?
And I think the issue of economy, as Ambassador mentioned, is very crucial to face the Trump second term and looking at the midterm election coming in 2 years and how much of this inflation that they're suffering and facing as an issue in the U.S. economy and how he can manage the domestic economic condition and situation is really a challenge for him. When the President Trump clearly stated that tariffs is a very important tool for U.S. diplomacy, he's using that as not as an economic policy, but as a diplomacy is that it could go both ways, I think. If it's an economic policy, then there's a lot of issues, a lot of problems that he would face because of the inflation that domestically that he's facing, and also raising tariffs. We usually accelerate the pressure for the inflation. So, if you're using that as a tool for diplomacy, I think that could go both ways. So that's what creates uncertainty.
So you bring up the issue of tariffs, and of course Donald Trump has been quite vocal about his plans to use tariffs once he assumes office again. What does that mean from Japan's perspective, and how do you interpret those plans?
Using tariff as a sort of weaponizing it as a tariff in a way to advance the U.S. interest in global affairs is a new dimension. I think it's very questionable as to how much that is going to be effective without hurting U.S. itself, and because of the interdependence is so high. So I think in spite of the rhetoric that as he was talking about, tariff is the most beautiful word or term, but in reality he'll be very wise not to really state use or overemphasize the effect of tariff.
I think that's exactly the point. The point is that if we cannot really do it properly, use it in the proper negotiating context, then if that would produce simply a quid pro quo and raising the tax and weaponize each other, and then that would give this sense to the world that we might be going back to the days before the World War II, because all this raising the tax and the others would follow, and all this bigger thy neighbor policy, and we know the history. So the mood of the age could be very darkened. That's what I'm worried.
I want to hear a little bit more about what you see as Japan's approach to confronting these issues that we've discussed regarding tariffs, regarding the economy. What do you see as Japan's approach?
I think we should be giving a good opinion and advice to the president and those people assisting him, including Secretary of State and Treasury and other people in charge of economic and trade policy. And the message should be, don't mistake, don't do wrong things to the friends and allies. And of course, we are ready to cooperate.
I think Japan is a little bit better positioned in terms of having a trust from President Trump because of the late Prime Minister Abe and his relationship with the President Trump then, and that compared to other countries, Japan has in that very in a position to tell President Trump what we need to tell directly, and that is an asset at the moment.
The second Trump administration comes at a time of increasing instability around the world, with ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. How do you think, under the new U.S. leadership, the U.S. will be navigating these crises?
I sincerely hope that the President Trump could somehow intervene and first of all stop the killing, the war itself. I don't think that would be a solution to fundamental conflict and a fundamental problem in Middle East or in Ukraine. But first, we have to see the ceasefire.
Well, I agree with Dr. Sunami. It is easy to say and difficult to do. We all know it, because once you agree to the ceasefire, then on the ground, where do you stop all this ceasefire line? I mean, Ukraine will be obviously worried that this ceasefire line could be the line of control like Korean Peninsula or other places in Pakistan, and de facto it could be the line of territory. That's why they continue to fight and push back, and Russia continue to to try to maintain and further expand the line of the fight, I mean, the front lines. But as we move on, obviously, there could be a more burden on the even Russians. They have to sacrifice more people and soldiers, and economically, they could still sustain, but there'll be more burden. And there could be some concern. And on the West too, I mean, there are more sort of voices that can we continue to support Ukraine both financially and militarily, and there has to be some moment of truth we have to face.
And looking to international issues more broadly, I think a country that's top of mind for many people is also China. So I'd like to ask you about how you see the Trump administration's approach to China, as well as what Japan's position is regarding this potential approach.
I think Trump's approach to China compared to Biden's policy over China could be obviously different. And the Biden policy was trying to balance between the competitions and confrontation, if necessary, and also cooperation, all these three coming together. And a kind of incremental sort of progress was pursued. But judging from what he has said, and those people around him have said, that all this element of collaboration could be more in the backyard. And but at the end, this could come back again. But my sense is that they could start from throwing hard balls. And I think China is expecting that one, possibly.
But my concern is how stable China is going to be facing this domestic social crisis and issues that we are now observing. Chinese economy is not as strong as it used to be. They are facing a lot of domestic issues that they have to solve. And if you're giving pressure from outside on China, I don't know how that would affect on the China's leadership. But today, I think that China is very different from the one that President Trump faced before the first time around. So that's the concern. So
all this Chinese domestic policy, especially economic struggle, would have an enormous impact on their decision making, how they would face the challenge from the United States from their own perspectives. And my sense is that they like to maintain keep the relationship with the United States, and for the sake of putting more political energies and resources into domestic economic recovery.
And also looking to East Asia region, another area of interest is the Korean Peninsula. So I wanted to hear your thoughts about what kind of expectations you have for the U.S. regarding the Korean Peninsula, as well as what that means for Japan.
You know that in the first Trump administration, he had leaders meeting with Kim Jong-un, and a kind of breakthrough moment in terms of addressing these nuclear and missile issues. And that was good, actually. As a matter of fact, after all this, Trump administration's effort to stop it, there wasn't really strong follow-up negotiations with North Korea. There was some other priority agenda. Then there was the Biden administration coming in. They were busy on the Ukraine and Middle East and even Chinese issues. But the point here is that while we are not negotiating with them, they continue to develop their capacity. So that's a concern. So my hope and wish is that the Trump administration would once again review the policy and try to engage themselves in the negotiation with North Korea. Mr. Trump is very casual and good at talking to a person like Kim Jong-un. He's kind of a great talent for doing that, to be honest.
And what do you see as the outlook for the Japan-U.S. alliance itself?
Over the years, this Japan-U.S. alliance has become deeper, stronger, and wider. Under the new Trump administration, I think there is a bipartisan consensus both in the U.S. Congress and administration that our alliance relationship is a key for the United States to play a role in the region. Having said this one, I think there could be some challenges, of course. I mean, since Mr. Trump is always thinking in terms of financial aspects of the relationship and this friend and ally. When Mr. Trump was telling NATO countries that you should increase defense from the level of GDP 2% to GDP 4% of GDP, say, I think they were resisting at the time. Nowadays, some countries in Europe, especially all the Baltic states and eastern part of Europe, he was right. I think the question is that should we really try to reduce our own burden? The issue is that should we share the burden for the sake of ourselves? And for example, if this is hypothetical, but if you could come and say that 2% of GDP within 5 years is great, but you could possibly do more, then we have to ask ourselves, is that the right thing for us, looking at the environment around us?
U.S.-Japan alliance is stronger than ever, and that doesn't mean that Japan is safer itself. I mean, there is an issue of Japan, and as we need to think about creating much safer environment in terms of, getting ready for any sort of, seeming conflict. Or if you look at the area of cyber or space, or and those areas are a new frontier of national security, and that even United States cannot provide the complete security safety net around it by itself. So we have to be working together with the United States, and they are welcoming the partnership with Japan, and that will never change, even though whoever the president is in the United States. I think that partnership is got to the point where we are very ready to even address more regional and global security.
One major point of global interest with the next Trump administration is its stance on the pressing issue of climate change. Donald Trump has been very vocal about his plans to increase fossil fuel production, among other climate-related policies. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, it is clear that when it comes to the climate crisis, U.S., the role is under the Trump administration would be somewhat very challenging. I think that he has already stated, and he has, and on the climate crisis, the global challenge issue is not something that he really wanted to address as a top priority of his administration. So the issue is how Japan and other countries can fill the gap of U.S. retrieving from the efforts of the addressing the climate crisis.
Well, yes, I think you're right that the priority is lower. Not necessarily priority, but Mr. Trump might try to reverse some of the policy taken by the previous administration. But I want to say this, all these Paris Conventions goals we have worked on and agreed need to be maintained. I mean, with or without, I would say, the U.S. administration, the U.S. government taking part of it.
So looking to international relations more broadly, what do you see as Japan's role in this?
I think the American leadership to lead, global architecture, especially multilateral institutions like United Nations, and including this climate change and disarmament and all other things. Hopefully not on the humanitarian front, but we might not see as big leadership as we had seen before. If the policy is focused more on the bilateral side of the policy, to some extent regional, but I think on the whole, this supporting international multilateral institution interest might be leveling down. That is true.
I think the most important thing that Japan can do is to place itself to see the perspective from the global south or other countries, not just G7, but and to understand their views and perspective as we see the new Trump administration for the second time coming back, and what they're seeing and what they're trusting, what are the views on the global agenda from their perspective is very important for Japan to understand. So Japan should continue and engage more with the dialogues with the global south.
So we've had these discussions talking about the role of international organizations, of course, the important role of official diplomatic channels and those kinds of direct discussions between countries. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about the potential role for private organizations in forging these ties and building these connections.
That there are a lot of things that as a private foundation can do where the government is really having a difficulty in addressing like issues like humanitarian issues or and the kind of principle of basic human security, and which Japan really endorsed, and we are free to engage a dialogue with anybody who either both sides of conflict, whether the West or the global South, or non-state actors that are as a very important stakeholder in the Middle Eastern crisis at the moment.
Yeah, I think that is true. I respect what your institution is doing. When the government is not necessarily able to fully place imprints, especially dealing with fighting forces. I know that Sasakawa is doing great to support, try to be even engaging in an effort to have a talk among the competing forces, and also using its own resources for humanitarian causes, and also global health and other agendas, Afghan and so forth. And,
yes.
And so I think this is again the complementar. Private sector can do more when the government found it difficult to go in, I think.
Looking to Japan-US relations and Japan acting as a bridge, as you mentioned, what do you see as the potential for conveying those voices from the Global South or acting as a bridge between these countries and the United States?
When we try to have a better relationship with ASEAN and other countries in the South, and, we have our own traditional close relationship with these countries, and the fact that we maintain and strengthen the relationship with this country would support the United States going forward, especially in competing with the challenging countries. I mean, especially authoritarian countries. As I said before, all this competition between the democratic nations and other authoritarian countries, and most of the countries in the South don't want to get involved. I mean, to be honest, including countries like ASEAN and so forth. But they want to see Japan-US alliance good, because they realize that this alliance could be a good counterbalance with too much dominance of China in the region.
Because we have a trust and a good relationship with the United States, we could independently engage to these countries based on our own national interest. Myanmar, Middle East, there are some areas that Japan's national interest, it doesn't necessarily always equal to what the U.S. interest is and U.S. policy is. But because we are building the very strong partnership and the alliance with the United States, Japan can engage in those issues.
Looking overall to this conversation that we've been having, we've been discussing the new Trump administration and looking toward the future of the Japan-US alliance and other global issues. With all of this conversation in mind, what would be your closing message in terms of the outlook for the future?
Trump administration could be different, approach could be different, and there could be surprise. But the important thing is we have our own visions and definitions of our own national interests that is closely entwined with the United States interests. And we should be confident about what we can do together with the United States, giving good advice, and also when we don't think it's right, we could say it. That is sort of important thing for the friends and allies.
Fundamentally, U.S.-Japan relations is not going to be so affected by, as we are moving on to more strengthening and better and the best relations that forever we had. And that the second term of President Trump is probably different from the first time that he is in it. So we don't know how we should approach this, but no matter what it takes, we have to really, at the early stage of the President Trump administration, that we have to show that Japan and U.S. are together.
This has been an incredibly insightful discussion. I wanted to thank you both very much for sharing your perspectives with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We very much enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope to continue to share insights from Japan. Until next time.
This program was made possible by the Sasakawa Peace Foundation.